I had a Tanzanian colleague for a while who worked with us, and nothing was wow. Everything was wow, wow, wow. And it didn't matter what was going on, but it was his enthusiasm that was so powerful. And so that's how I was feeling, listening to Karen and what you're talking about. It's just a wow, wow, wow. So more applause, maybe? Yeah? So this is stories about relationships, and I want to bring you greetings from the Walker Leadership Institute, a place you've never heard of before, at Eden Seminary. Maybe you've heard of Eden Seminary in St. Louis. Many of the people that were so active and involved in the Ferguson Uprising were Eden alum or faculty, and so it's a center for progressive Christianity, a place where people go out into the world in very powerful and particular ways. And yes, they sometimes don't get along, and they fuss like church people fuss. And so it is not Eden in that way, but it is Eden. I also, in doing that, want to say that I bring greetings then from Anne and Tanya, from Sonia and Lisa and David, and the group that I get to work with, because they're all sort of here, even if I didn't bring them here, or even if you didn't bring them here. I also want to bring you greetings from St. Stephen's in the Vine. We started our work together at St. Stephen's in 2001, and along the way figured out that a lot of people had an association with us that was, we were nice old white people who did rummage sales and tried to sell them barbecue and pancakes on Shrove Tuesday. And so we discerned and discovered an idea about being the Vine, which is very much a collaboration. And so Cornita and Allie and Carol and Steve and Peggy and I are the folks who are the staff in that work, but there's other folks who you'll hear some stories about. I also want to say that this room there's some people that I am deeply grateful to in this room. My spouse and partner, Linda, is here, and I hope you will meet her. Yeah. Somebody I've known longer than Linda is here, and I just ran into him. I think Joe Swimmer. Where's Joe? So I started out of seminary being a high school chaplain, and Joe was a student at Holland Hall in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he's here with a consortium of endowed parishes. And I just want to say that it's just extraordinary. I remember Joe and his bravery and his bright and just so much about him. And from that time, and I'm looking forward, we're going to have some time together today. So also here is Bishop Doug Sparks, who actually grew up in Ferguson, Missouri, and has family in Ferguson. And so when he's in town to visit family, he is with us at St. Stephen's, and so it's great to see him here. I want to mention somebody who's here and also somebody who isn't here. If any of you have had the privilege of working with Chuck Winder and Heidi Kim, they have been so, yeah, I think clapping about that's a good one too, right? So they have been so present to us in the work since Michael Brown was killed. And Chuck braved being in Missouri. As you maybe know, Missouri is on the NAACP and also globaltravelers.com's list of places you don't want to travel. It's on the global site along with places that are war zones. And it's a place you don't want to travel as a person of color because the Missouri legislation decided no protections. No protections. So if you're driving along and you're in a rural area or in a city area or anywhere in Missouri and you get stopped and you're a person of color, you're praying extra hard because that's the context. Now, Heidi, I could do like all 20 minutes about Heidi, but I would say, she's shaking her head, so I would just say that I said this is about relationships, and Heidi's presence and wisdom, her bravery, her sense of humor, her appreciation of what is most human is a deep gift about walking with her in this work. So Heidi, I'm really, thank you. So Miles Davis was doing the sessions with musicians for Kind of Blue, and he set up bandstand, typical recording studio with music stands, and just put some notes. He didn't put all the notes, and he invited the musicians, and they got up there and they filled in the rest of the parts. They filled in the notes. And so I'm asking you all to play this music with me, because these are some stories. Because that's the body of Christ, right? We play these things and we improv some of it, and we know other parts, and we have to unlearn other parts. So I want to start by telling you some stories and then invite you into playing along. In 2001, I end up as the interim part-time, I'm part-time there, rector. And the place was a mess. People weren't talking to each other, imagine that in church. They had to buy out the prior rector, imagine that in church. They had been assessed, dialogued, all of the stuff that you can do to try to figure out why people in a congregation aren't treating one another well. And there were factors, unknown factors, the change of the community. When I started in Ferguson, it was 1/3 of the community was African American, black, and now over 2/3. The growing Catholic parish near us is growing because of the Spanish-speaking community that's gathered around it. So if you're old and white and had a certain sense of Ward and Jude Cleaver and the Episcopal Church in its heyday, and it was hard. It was hard, and these are not bad people. These are really good people. The people in Ferguson who are white stayed put. They didn't head west. So I'm new there. I'm doing what I was trained to do, right? I have a box of books, right? And the books are things like church change and conflict in church and growing your church and historic ways to be church and church this and church that. And I'm determined I'm going to put them on the bookshelf, and I'm doing that, and all of a sudden there's a knock on the door, and stepping into the office is a woman whose name is Jane. And Jane has got a plate of cookies, and she goes, I thought you might want a cookie, and these chocolate cookies are really good. And she was really correct. Now, Jane died a year ago, and we're going to do something to honor Jane, because so much of relationship is the gathered, but also those in our blessed memory. So Jane came to Ferguson. Her name was Jane Nishwaki. She was in the Second World War, served in the Second World War, and then she went to Japan to teach English, and she fell in love with a Japanese man. They got married. He was a nuclear scholar and scientist. They did research about the effect on fishermen because of the drift from the Nagasaki bomb. Published this work. It became significant in setting up what are some of the criteria about nuclear safety. That relationship didn't continue, and so she returned to Ferguson in the early 1960s with 2 American-Japanese children. It was mentioned yesterday, I live on coffee. My mother's maiden name was Coffee. That's real. So she moved to a community, became the beloved middle school PE teacher, but you should know until 1974, certain streets between Ferguson and communities that are black communities, historically black communities, had chains that went up at sundown. And so it's a sundowner community, and she's there with her children and they experienced unbelievable and awful things. Jane developed this style, though. She would just kind of, find the open space. I'm going to move around here. Find the open space, step into it. She would sense what people might need, what they said they needed, and then she would provide it. And so she had some she stepped into the office. She sensed that, chocolate cookies would work for me. They still do. And then she gave me a cookie, right? Now, I tell you all of that because I'm going to be kind of, here's three things sort of talk. So, open space, sense what's going on. And then serve, and when I say serve, I mean not like, hey, let me show you all the stuff that we have as Episcopalians or as white people or as educated people or as whatever people. It's what are we invited into? Okay. So fast forward 5 years. I half-time in the parish, worked as a management consultant. Big client is the Four Seasons hotels and resorts. And when I would go and stay there, I always felt like Tom Hanks in Big, because they put you in the room that somebody else isn't renting, and usually those are nice rooms. Like they're, a month's house payment for me would buy half the room for the night, right? And so we're at the headquarters, which is a beautiful place, like floor-to-ceiling windows. It's Toronto, it's snowy, it's beautiful. The CEO, Katie Taylor, comes by and talks to us, which is kind of like having, Jesus or God or somebody come and visit your table. And she goes away, and one of my colleagues who works on my side with this work that we're doing their employee culture work. He's not a Four Seasons person, he's on the team I'm part of, and he tells a story about going with his family to the Lanai, and he'd known the people at that property because we talked to people at all of the places all over the world, and they check in. He's got, a daughter who's 7 and another who's 13, and they go in, and at the bathroom on the side of the tub are these little baskets, and they have their names like cut out in sponges, and for the 7-year-old it's pink and purple, and it's kind of like that range of things, and for the older one it's kind of basil hand lotion and product, right? Well, of course the daughters, they're like, we got to stay in the Four Seasons hotel anytime we go anywhere, everywhere, we got to do it. And Chris had to say, well, that ain't happening, but it's nice to be here. They comped us this wonderful room, this wonderful space. So he tells this story, and one of the people who was on the team from the Four Seasons goes, oh, anticipatory hospitality. Like, what? He said, anticipatory hospitality. It's, in hotel business, it's thinking about who's coming to your property and who are they, and what would they delight in? What would be a response to something they might want or need? Winter socks, a razor, It's not our stuff. We think we know what you want. Here, enjoy our stuff the way we enjoy it. It's who is this person we're encountering? And in churches, sometimes we get a little backwards on that, right? We talk about my pew, our lovely hymns. We see this in some of the work in Ferguson, where we have lots of young people around with guitar lessons and circus and other things, but there's still that, when are they going to show up at 10 o'clock and be on the vestry and clean up after our, events, and when are they going to do like the stuff? And again, the people who have that hope are having it because it's what they love about church. I mean, I want to be really clear about that, this is so much a part of why people show up is that they're feeling fed. Something's happening for them. So, anticipatory hospitality, start thinking about that. Start having community conversations, hearing from neighbors what they care about, what's going on, what they hope for. We start doing things like we got rid of those, 14-ton typical church 8-foot tables that only 4 people can move, and we got plastic ones that clean with Windex. We put in a screen, so we got a projector so people could show movies. We started working to discover who we might be in the community, who the community was inviting us to be. And we were doing that kind of work, and then Michael Brown was killed. And so because of some work that had been going on with the guitar program, arts education gets defunded quickly when school districts have concerns about money, and so we created a program. Guitar Steve is that guy, so kids learn guitar and ukulele. We wanted it to be arts-based, but imagine trying to get pianos in and out of people's houses or pottery wheels, right? So a Channel 5 called and said, what's going on in Ferguson after this? And I said, well, the people aren't getting food. And our food pantry's closed because the stores are closed. Now, between the police and the press and protesters, it was impossible to travel from place to place. Plus, it became a war zone, if any of you have been in a natural disaster or a war zone. So it was completely militarized. And so this channel came out, Channel 5, and filmed the piece, and then they put it on at 5 o'clock and at 6 o'clock, and at 7 o'clock this SUV rolled onto the parking lot with all kinds of non-perishable food. So during the next 3 weeks, Parish Hall would fill up, Parish Hall would start to empty, Parish Hall would fill up, start to empty. And people just started assembling, right? Some folks flew in to do the work. There were people in the community that became really great at different parts of this. Little kids could, move boxes of mac and cheese, bigger kids, soup. We started to develop these kind of supply lines, right? And I wore my collar more in that period than I usually do because I could get places. That privilege of having that could get me places. We collected, we received, we were given, and distributed $250,000 worth of food, which blows my mind still. And it came in bags and boxes, and the UPS guy hated us because Amazon Prime Kitchen or whatever it's called delivers that way, and so he was like 2 times a day with lots of boxes of canned soup. But there was a moment, a pivot where a father who runs a local place where you get your car fixed, whose son was trying to buy weed and got killed, showed up and said, I feel like I know what the Browns are feeling right now, and I wanted to bring you some food. And right after that, a grandmother and her granddaughter showed up who come to our pantry and are sometimes sleeping at different people's houses and trying to get by. The little girl had a picture that she wanted to show God. And it was of people being nice to each other. And so that was the work. And there was a woman who was the self-appointed mayor of one of the apartment complexes, and she had a borrowed shopping cart, right? And she knew who was where and who didn't have toilet paper. Now think about it. You're in your apartment. This place is mostly older people, so you're in your apartment, you don't have toilet paper. And so she would go knocking on doors and say, I know you're in there, and we have some toilet paper and toothpaste. And like you were saying, things that, even the small hand lotions and things that people so cherished. So that opening a space and sensing what's going on and responding in terms of what the community needs. Thank you. 5 minutes. That's really been the work. So what I tell you about all these people, they're all in the work. It's not anything but this continued notes on the page, people stepping in, people trying to sense what's going on. Now, I would tell you, I wished when I graduated from seminary, and this was no fault of the seminary, that there were 2 things written on index cards. One of them would be that it's not about serve us, it's about service. Right? So easy, I like what I like, it's so easy to get in that space where it's just like, but I don't like that, or I do like this. We've added circus, because some circus folks who teach, whose kids one year go to Israel and participate with a circus that's Israeli and Palestinian kids, Circus Harmony, it's called for that reason. The other year, the kids come here from Israel, Palestine, and so they needed a space. We have a homeschooling group in the building that's the kind of tie-dye granola hippie homeschoolers, so, they are so much energy. And so many of them have been involved in so many of the things that we do. I mentioned the guitar program. They've done 4 CDs, and kids are learning to play guitar and then ukulele if you're little, because it's good for your hands to play ukulele. And I would tell you, when it comes to the recitals, the little 4-year-olds are still learning to play a string or 2 or 3 at a time, but they are excellent bowers. So when you clap for them, they got that. They're also, by the way, great in circus learning how to walk on fire. They do that. So there's more notes on the page and more space to play along. So that's what I would tell you. We continue to discover things. But one of the things, and I know my time is close to up, is that 3 years ago, an Episcopal Service Corps member, whose name is Tori, wrote a grant to the United Thank Offering. And I know, isn't someone here from the United Thank Offering? There we go. All right. So this thank you has everything to do with you. And I need some Janes. I need like 8 Janes to come on up. So I need some Janes. All right. Remember I told you Jane came with the cookie, and here we go. All right. So in our kitchen's become a food incubator. It could be a Joe, by the way. I didn't mean like, wow, or a James, or, it could. So we have this food incubator, and right now there's somebody producing syrups for, make your own sodas and stuff. There's a food church that meets in there, and they just pop up in neighborhoods and feed people. There's a sourdough baker that we think is there, but he's in there like from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. on Saturday, so we don't know. We just sometimes smell the stuff. There's a chef who's busy doing work with with returning citizens so that they can learn. But one of the people, the first person, is Weston and Wade Chocolate Company. And so, if you all, this is kind of like Methodist pew communion, only a little different, right? I do not have grape juice, but if you would just share some chocolate with people. You would keep that one? All right. All right. All right. So the other thing that I wish was on the card, and Heidi and Chuck and so many others have worked with us about this, in the same way that it's service, not serve us, I wish the card said justice, not just us. So the notes that we have not yet figured out how to get on the page very well is that we're still a state where it's not safe for people of color to travel. We're still a community where police shoot people regularly. We're still struggling how to live in right relationship when we see the economic injustice and the racial injustice. So, as I said, inviting you all to play along, to help us with the notes, and I look forward to those conversations with you. Thank you.